without further ado, please allow me to welcome the cast of Gangs of London. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Well, first of all, let me just go ahead and say I have to be mad at y'all because I haven't gotten as much sleep in the past 3 days binging your show. I feel bad for anybody who watched this live because I was mad about the 20 seconds of the title card when I was going from episode to episode, and you were making them wait week to week, which I think is so unfair. But Joe, I'm going to start with you because I know that, you and Gareth talked about this and Matt about joining the project, but I have to think when you first were thinking of taking this role, doing another family crime drama, did you give it a second thought or were you like, sign me up?
You know what? I just, it's so different to Peaky Blinders. And I think it's a director-led show. Gareth Evans comes from, Asian influenced cinema and kind of has a real aesthetic and a real style. So does Corin Hardy, Xavier Gens. And for me, they were trying to create a really kind of interesting new world that we hadn't seen before. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I think it's very different to what I've done before. And it was very exciting to play this particular role.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because from literally from the very beginning, first scene, obviously, it really grabs you. And I do have to say that I think if I'm reading this correctly, going back and reading the tea leaves, it shocked the UK audiences and folks were really sort of captivated with that opening. I'm just curious if you knew that was the reaction. Were you sitting at home watching as people freaked out with this is how you guys are opening it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the idea, isn't it? It's the show throughout is trying to up the ante and trying to continually sort of shock and scare its audience. And that opening hook, I think in this modern day binge watching television, there's so much out there, there's so much to watch, so many different platforms. It's kind of important you have to sort of grab an audience early on these days. It feels like it's harder to let something burn slowly and wait for 1 or 2 episodes before anything really kicks off. It almost has to happen instantaneously. And certainly I think that's what the idea behind that was. And then also it's about then topping that throughout the show. And once you've seen that, it gets progressively more horrific and more blood and guts and God knows what else.
Yeah, looking back on it, that was training wheels for what we were going to expect later on in the season. So I'm glad they sort of set the stage.
Yeah, for sure. It was it was fun and it's a good trailer moment, I think.
Yes, a very good trailer moment. Sopé, you have a few great trailer moments as well, because I mean, obviously with Gareth, you can expect a very physical, action intensive production. He's going to bring what he brings to productions in this. I'm just curious, what was it like prepping for this? Because, I don't know how much action stuff you've done before. I mean, I know you did, a lot of, World Shakespearean stuff, but was this a real adjustment to have to go and put the action out there?
I don't know if it was a real adjustment. Maybe that speaks to my own psyche. But I've always been very physical in I play a lot of sports, for example. I play football or soccer. I actually play American football as well, played rugby. So that dedication to a period of time of training wasn't really new for me. And it was something that I sort of was very willing to throw myself into. But there was a whole month of dedicated training and choreography time. And even up to a couple of weeks before we'd shoot the sequences, we were still re-rehearsing bits to make sure that they were perfect and safe. And like you said, when you do a Gareth Evans project, you know exactly what you're going to get yourself into. It's going to be, violent. It's going to be energetic. It's going to be fast paced. And I didn't want to be a weak link in that process. So I had to work really hard to get those training moments.
You came with it. I mean, the show really opens in an interesting way. Folks have made the obvious Martin Scorsese comparisons with, Gangs of New York versus Gangs of London. And it definitely lives in that crime, thriller, noir sort of place. But it's really different because I watch a lot of BBC stuff already, but I think this is the first one where I've really seen this kind of London. Like there was a film that came out over the summer called Blue Story, which I think is another piece of content that really sort of shows things differently. And I was just curious if that was maybe what drew you to the project, because I feel like this is such an authentic version of like modern London.
It's definitely a version of London that we've
a version of London. I shouldn't say this is like everybody's living The Sopranos. Let me be clear.
Put a little asterisk on its authenticity, because we're not all out here in these streets loaded up with weapons and like fighting over turf. But I think it was a really important distinction from Londons that we've seen already. And yes, it's heightened and it's a bit more dramatic, but that's what keeps the show interesting, But yes, there was this interrogation and exploration as to what goes on behind the closed doors within the city that was very fascinating and very what's the word? It had me hooked. So I wanted to share that with our viewers.
Yeah. And Michelle, I don't want to make it seem like the guys are the only ones that got to have fun with the action. I'm trying to make this chat somewhat spoiler free because I know the actors watching it, some of them will have already seen the show, which is available on AMC, but some of them, they're going to watch this and then go see this show. I just have to maybe tell them Spoons and your character. So maybe not giving too much away, but can you talk about how you approached that scene? I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, very much so. I mean, when I was approached for the role, and I met with Gareth and Matt, they gave me a whole backstory, a written biog, which was fantastic, actually. And it heavily involved Lucian's character and my husband. So he gave us a wealth of information of backstory in terms of how they met, where they'd come from, and parts of that were touched upon within filming. Not a great deal, but at least we felt cemented in our approach, because we had been given so much background information about family and friends and how that had progressed, and about how Marion had to take a back seat when she started to become a mother, and actually how much that ate into her core, and she resented it, and the betrayal eventually, which spurs her forward. And then using, in some ways, it's like pushing a son who isn't, so sort of like, she thinks that he should be more sort of on the front foot than he actually is, and her sort of like Machiavellian pushing him actually pushes him too far, really. And then she has to try and scrabble the brakes again and the reins and take control. But she's interesting. Yeah.
I think that's a common theme with pretty much every character that's on screen in this entire show, is that everybody is like Transformers. There's more than meets the eye to every single one of these characters. And in a way, with all these theater actors, you think it would make sense. It's like Shakespearean drama with just like really violent action. But I'm just curious, with so many theater actors, did you guys rehearse it that way? Because Lucian, I mean, with you start with like this huge like funeral soliloquy, basically, where you like talk everything through that. So how do y'all approach the filming of it? Because these are film and television folks, but the majority of the cast is theater and lives in that world as well. So I was just curious if they married those together in a certain way.
Well, I think dare I say, bigging us up as a company, all of us, not only are these such a fine collection of fellow players, but when you combine that with someone like Gareth, who not only is a master of action, but he's one of the few directors that I've ever worked with who completely trusts the actors. He has a complete and utter trust in what you can give and what you can bring. So, for instance, on the day of the funeral scene, I was completely free. I felt completely free. Gareth gave me free rein. We discussed the one or two things within the script that I thought, could we change this? Could we change that? He completely trusted me and trusted us to tell the story. And that's where I think the beautiful marriage of the two bloodlines, as it were, of screen and stage meet. Because, you know, in the end, we're all the same animals, really. We're telling stories. It's just a question of, you know, how big the canvas is. But in terms of playing, doing the work, that part was easy. It was really, really easy. You know, you've got, as I said, I'll never tire of saying it, such fine fellow players, and a director who trusts you, and a new adventure. I think that was the thing for all of us. It was something new, fresh, exciting, different, and you know, you bring yourself totally to it and have fun. And I think the results have done pretty well.
Yes. I mean, that was the other thing I was just going to say. And I was going to talk to you about it, Michelle, because I found this out again later, but this was the quarantine viewing of the UK at the beginning of sort of like when folks started staying at home. And I found out from one of my UK friends, like this was like our version of Tiger King. Everybody was talking about the show. And like, Michelle, like, you know, you've been involved in some things that people talk about before. And I was just curious, though, if there was a different reaction with this, because it was more of a UK phenomenon, but it was just as, like, I would say, intense as what folks were like with the early days of Game of Thrones, too.
Oh, gosh. You know, I was in Ireland because I just finished a job. So, and I hadn't been there for a while. So I went to Ireland and literally, I stayed there because I realized what was happening. And I was meant to be doing another job and that got cancelled. So, and literally, I stayed there. So I was in a cocoon in the middle of nowhere by the sea. I was on the beach every day. I was walking the dogs and talking to the donkey. And, you know, I mean, I was just having a bliss time, you know, not seeing anyone apart from my brother. And so I literally sort of, you know, every now and again, I'd get a phone call from my agent going, it's done this. I'd be like, oh, really? Wow, that's great. You know, I had no idea, you know, really what was actually going on at all. So I was quite, you know, quite late to the party in that respect, really.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, welcome to the party. It's a big one. There's lots of folks that are very excited. Pippa, then I'm going to kind of ask you a little bit about this because you were part of a show that I loved, and I was always telling people they need to go try and find it because it was another one of these great things with the fact that we have so much content now. You have to have people sort of, I think, like advocate for someone to spend time with something. And I was a huge fan of Harlots and everything you did on that. This must be the other side. You're not part of this beautiful thing that you're trying to get people to know about. It's the other way around. Everyone, I'm sure, was reaching out to you after the first episode. So I'm guessing you were probably a little bit less removed than Michelle, and we're able to sort of like embrace the phenomenon. So I'm curious maybe what it was like for you.
Yeah, I mean, now I'm hearing that Michelle was on a beach every day. I'm kind of wishing that we could have traded places.
There was a lot of wind and rain, Pippa. We are talking Ireland after all, you know.
But no, yeah, loads of people got in touch and were just like, this is the coolest show that we've seen. And it doesn't look like it comes out of the UK, you know what I mean? It looks like this big blockbuster TV show. And it dropped in the UK, I think, at the best time, and everybody needed something. Everybody was kind of grappling for something to watch. And then, you know, along came Gangs, and it's you know, I'm really proud to be part of it. And like Lucian says, to get to work with these guys was just wonderful.
Yeah, and I think, again, what was really interesting, I was watching an interview that Gareth did where he talked about the women of the show, because in a lot of crime dramas or just crime, the genre in general, women sort of get the short shrift. And he wanted to make sure that all of the women characters in the film really had their own dynamic, and that they were really, you know, three-dimensional characters that had an entire thing that was driven as, I think your character especially shows that, because she's sort of supposed to be like the gilded caged princess. And then like everyone else, we learn more as it goes along. So I was just curious how you approached her, I would say like second half arc, and how much you tried to put that into the first half.
Well, when I read the final 2 episodes with the whole, no spoilers. I was kind of I had to then track back as to what I'd done over the past, 4 months or so, and it did, and sort of put the puzzle together and go, okay, so that's where I'm finishing. That all now kind of makes sense in terms of, where her husband is, or the way she approaches the Elliot situation, the way she's with her father and stuff. So it added a really nice, complicated layer to Shannon, which I don't think you get immediately at the beginning. She is, the kind of gangster's princess. She does as she's told. She's really sweet, but also quite fierce and loyal. And then by the end of the show, we're in a completely different place. And as an actor, to have that arc is really great.
But I did want to ask you about Gareth and Matt, and specifically when they were casting you, what they told you about your character, because that's one of those ones, like, not every one of you guys knew where you were going, but I'm guessing you did.
You're guessing I did? Why?
I mean, no, it just seems like you couldn't have been cast without knowing. I don't know. I'm going to get to Sopé too on this.
I think the way it worked, like similarly to what Michelle just said, we all got a kind of like, I suppose, outline about the character and their motivations, their kind of family, their history, kind of going backwards, but not as much going forwards. And it's kind of like thrilling, it's kind of like, a kind of Mike Lee kind of influence type process to be performing without knowing exactly what's happening in front of you, because it allows you to connect to what's happening in the present. You don't have to get too focused on where you're headed, because there's so much going on in the individual episode that you're in. So like, we all kind of got given, as far as I know anyway, we all got given the episodes as we went along. And so like, it kind of, I suppose, mimics the experience of watching it. Like, there'd be a moment where like, we get sent episodes 6, 7, and 8, and all of us would be like reading it like frantic. Checking if we'd been killed off, or the next episode, which is, high stakes, high risk, high reward. But I think thankfully for us, at least, we made it to the end.
Yeah, and then also too, I was just going to talk about the funeral, the opening scene. There's that confrontation with all of you guys in the room, and I'm not giving too much away because this one was part of the trailer. Did y'all film that early on? Because that's pretty much all the principal players coming together for this very intense scene where Joe, your character, is being all kinds of Joe Pesci and Goodfellas, and there's a lot going on. So I just want to know what it was like for you guys that day. Was that early? Was this like a little further along? Like, it was like, this is the show. Like, that moment is what sets everything. Every character kind of defines who they are in that moment.
I was fairly early on, if I remember. It was fairly early on. We spent a lot of time in the red room. A lot of time. Not only were there 5,000 actors, there were 10,000 crew. We spent a lot of time in there. And you know what? It's one of those moments where you look back and you go, again, I can't stop saying it because it's the truth. Without such fantastic, generous, professional, talented co-workers, it would have been torture. But we had such a good time, everybody taking care of each other, keeping the spirit of the humor up, letting the madness come in, And I think it all adds to the rich tapestry of the scene. But yeah, I think for me personally, the scenes and the moments that I have enjoyed the most were the scenes where all of us as the family were together. I think those are the ones that I have the fondest memories of, just because that's, as you said, that is the foundation of everything. The family is the foundation of everything. And so and watching those moments splinter as the series developed was very satisfying.
Awesome. Sopé, I know you mentioned that Joe, it was a fake gun, but I guess it was pretty hard. Maybe he was giving you a little bit of like to the back of the head, like push on that one. Sorry, Joe, I don't want to put you on the bus.
It was only fake in that it wasn't going to fire something into the back of my head, thankfully. But we were using deactivated, do you call them? Deactivated weapons. So it had the weight, and then it had Joe's body weight behind it as well. But it's great. Like, I trust Joe. I know he's an excellent performer, and I was giving it as good as I got, or I tried to. But like Lucy said, it was wonderful to work with Joe and with everybody else, because yeah, we just had this trust. We were able to play with each other, and the gun to the back of the head was a testament to that.
Paapa, I want to talk about something that actors often mention whenever I do these talks with SAG-AFTRA. A lot of them talk about, you know, when they get into the costuming, that's when they realize the character. And one thing I did notice when I was watching a few of the episodes is how each character's style, I think, maybe talks a lot about who they are. And Paapa, I was just curious if there was any like comments you guys made about the suits and like who wears this or what, because it felt like everyone has their own look. And I'm wondering if there was like little touches that you guys discussed about those looks. Yeah,
I mean, I suppose like we were very lucky to be kind of supported economically by Sky and by Cinemax AMC on these projects, because it allowed the visually, aesthetically to be achieved, because it's so important when we're talking about this world and we're talking about us like living in these high stakes, big money environments. You've got to look the part, and yeah, a lot of the suits that at least I was wearing were a lot more than my paycheck, at least. So it was a real thrill, because it allows you to make the journey towards the character, you know, like Paapa wouldn't be wearing a X amount £1,000 suit, but the character would. And it's important that at least the character feels appreciated in that way.
Is there, and I'm going to ask this to the guys because women get asked this question all the time. So Jojo, was there anything you wanted to steal? Because I know like you had to at least like turn to wardrobe, like, come on, Joe, anything?
I mean, I had a leather jacket I quite liked, but then I just thought, as soon as this show comes out, I'm never going to be able to wear this again. So I left it.
Lucian, did you grab anything?
No, there was the gray suit, the gray Ted Baker suit was kind of, I was like, damn, I'm looking sexy. But as Joe said, they become so much a part of the character that to then wear them in real life is almost a little bit.
So nobody took it.
Can I just wanted all of Michelle's costumes? Like
yes, though.
I mean, come on.
She was giving me like Kate Blanchett in Ocean's 8 meets like Camilla Soprano. I was living. Okay, anyway. Before we get out of here too, though, Joe, I talked about it earlier, but yeah, like this is for actors, so let's talk about it. This is your character being so singularly focused. I mean, it was one of those things where I'm like, this is what every actor wants to do, but he's nuts. Like, he's crazy. There's nothing sensible about him. And I just wonder if that was a question with you and Gareth to like add the other side to him. Because I think this show more than anything, some of the other crime stuff they try to show, maybe he like whatever. With him, it's nothing. He says that I think in the opening shot, nothing is going to happen and I don't care. I will burn everything down until I find out who killed my father. And I just wondered if there was ever a discussion about maybe making him veer off that differently.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge to try and win an audience over when you drop a kid off a building and you speak in the way that I was speaking and all the rest of it. And, you know, it's a polarizing character. It's a polarizing role. You know, he's from a certain background and, you know, he's making decisions that I guess the average audience member wouldn't agree with or relate to. He's hot-headed. Why would you do that? Why now are you doing that? And why on earth are you doing that? But for me, you know, there was plenty of motivation behind it and plenty of emotion behind it as well, I guess. And that's kind of what drew me to the role. And I think playing these characters with different shades of light and dark is kind of is fun, and for me it's something I enjoy as a performer.
And yeah, and it's definitely one of the reasons why folks have become so into it with the show. I mean, it just came here in the States here in October. And this one's actually for Sopé and Paapa, because both of you were in other things that came out around the time of Gangs of London with I May Destroy You and His House. Two excellent things which folks should check out very, very quickly if they can. And I'm just curious if you felt the American audience difference, because I know we're different if like we're reacting to something. And I feel like with you guys having two things that came out around the same time, a lot of folks probably got introduced to you guys with both of these. And I know we're not shy. So I'm just curious if it was a little different.
I suppose for me, like because of the global pandemic and everything else that's happening this year, a lot of the response that you would feel for being in a show that was successful or a film that was successful is filtered into purely social media. And whilst I have a profile and I try and like engage with it as much as possible, it's not like my primary means of communication. So yeah, I think there was a lot of love shown for both things. I think there's more engagement to come from the States with Gangs of London when it comes back later, I mean, in the next year, in 2021. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I mean, you get a couple of people come up to you and be like, oh, I think the show was amazing, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe it would have been more difficult in different circumstances. But yeah, I personally, I'm yet to feel, and I'm not really looking for it. Let me not lie to you. I'm not standing in the middle of the streets being like, oh, can you love the stuff that I've been? I'm just glad that people are enjoying it, you know?
Hey, that's fair. But you guys, you know, these are some popular things. I also, Paapa, I May Destroy You. That was like the talk of my group chat for like a month. We didn't talk about anything else. Just that.
Yeah, I mean, I really echo what Sopé is saying, because like it's obviously amazing to be, you know, a part of things that people are responding to, and especially, I suppose, during lockdown when like there's not really much else to do but, you know, sit at home and watch TV, or if you're Michelle, stroke a donkey or whatever. Like,
I'm a donkey.
Out there. But like, so it's good to be involved in all of those things, but it is all relative, and there's been so much going on politically, health pandemic, all sorts globally. So, I mean, yeah, I think we're all thankful that we've had these opportunities, and we look forward to how we can build on them in the future. And hopefully we get those opportunities. But right now, I think there's plenty of other things to be thankful for. And I think we're all willing to be patient in terms of you know, receiving plaudits or anything else as a result.
Yeah, I'll be glad when, you know, Zoom is something that is occasionally around, not every day. So I get that. The one thing I will also go ahead and say is, you know, thankfully, we already know you guys are coming back for season 2. This is such a loaded question for this group because of reasons, because I don't know who I can ask this. But for those of you that I can ask about season 2, and I know you cannot tell us much, if you can just give us like a little amuse-bouche of what you think season 2 is going to bring. And I'm going to be really safe and start with Pippa.
You were going to do that.
I'm really trying like to be as delicate as possible with this question.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm the worst person to start with somebody. I don't know.
Okay. This is such a hard question to ask this cast. Sopé?
As far as I know, Elliot walked off to the sunset and it found a donkey to stroke. So I have no idea what happens in the second series. I'm as much in the dark as you are.
Okay, can we at least tell you when you guys are expected to go back and do it? I'm guessing y'all will still be in COVID and all of this to when you head back into production.
Well, I could tell you, but
I have to kill you.
You have to kill us. Okay. You know what? Never mind. They made the announcement. We're going to get a season 2, and that's all these folks will tell us. I'm so sorry, but you guys will have to tune in. That's basically the only thing we can say about season 2. It's happening.